Coming to you live from the bunker beneath Edward Snowden's bunker, it's another edition of The Fray. Tonight, we revisit the conversation about free-to-play fighting games, and either I get to play top lane Bison or I feed. Introducing first, the man that once said the Wii Fit trainer is a more compelling character than Mega Man. It's twitter.com/Hanzo Gonzo. We're talking to Hanzo Gonzo.
Wii Fit Girl is really hot.
Oh, sure. You can just project whatever lady you want onto her blank face. That's part of her appeal, I suppose.
Well, you can project a lot of things on her face.
Like within the first 30 seconds. The second most handsome man to ever appear on this program, narrowly losing to Alex Jabali's biceps. It's twitter.com/Gutex. Ryan Gutierrez, hello.
Thank you for having me back, Derry.
Oh, of course, every time. It's a NeoGaf All-Star and star of upcoming VH1 mockumentary Cross Assault. Where are they now? Twitter.com/Blu-ray. Martin Blake, hello.
I was banned from NeoGaf, so.
What? I honestly.
Yeah, this happened like a long time ago. Oh well.
Really?
Yeah, so screw 'em.
Well, and last but not least, first time on the program, and welcome to a long friend of mine, 4 years, 5 years, I don't know, music producer, consumer of super mushrooms, and the guy who gives you the music that leads in our program for the last few months. It's twitter.com/A_rival. It's A-Rival. How are you doing?
Pretty good, and that is twitter.com/8bitpimp.
Oh, no, that's not right. Why don't you change it?
Because if you look up twitter.com/A-Rival, you'll get a pretty pleasant surprise.
Oh, everybody should look it up then.
Yeah, someone's already taken it.
Oh, good.
Oh, well.
All right, so tonight we're going to be talking about free-to-play fighting games. We did briefly touch on this on a show a couple weeks ago, but tonight we're dedicating the entire hour to it. We're going to talk about the games that are coming out. We're going to talk about the ramifications those games have on the present, and then we're going to talk about the future, and we're going to look to the future and what these things could mean for the fighting game community moving forward. So I'll direct my first question out tonight to Hanzo Gonzo. I know that you play Dota 2 a lot, so you're familiar with Dota 2 and League of Legends would probably be the archetype that most people would mention first when they talk about free-to-play. It got started with MMORPGs, but those are the games that people most often look towards when they talk about this. Games like League of Legends and Dota 2, they consistently produce content, and it's on a monthly cycle. So every month in League of Legends, for example, they release a new character and a couple of new skins, but it's typically the character that's the big draw. Hanzo, are you at all concerned at all that with fighting games moving into a free-to-play arena, before we start talking about any of these specific games, just in general, that we might be seeing the introduction of a business model that could prove to be detrimental to the overall, I don't want to say atmosphere or I mean, like, fighting games are very different. We don't see a lot of updates. When you have monthly updates like that, is that going to be detrimental to fighting games in general?
It can, because like we have an example of MK9 where the updates actually probably destroyed the community. The people coming into the community just turned them off of it completely, just because there's an update every other couple of weeks, and it changes the game. It changes the game a lot. And people don't want to relearn a character the day before a tournament. Have to relearn all these matchups. So it could be detrimental if you're patching balance-wise, like instead of just bug fixes and whatnot, and just letting the game, progress balance-wise for at least a year. I think that can be detrimental. Plus, free-to-play on console has historically not been successful ever. So I don't really see consoles being the future of the FGC. I see it moving on to PC. But we have to get the developers to push that idea. And I don't know if the big developers like Namco or Capcom are willing to do that yet.
Well, Gutex, Hanzo mentions console development versus PC development. The major players in fighting game development are console developers. Namco, Capcom, and now Atlas. These guys primarily develop console games. But I think Hanzo raises up a good point that this is a business model that faces some difficulty with distribution, with production on consoles. Do you think that these companies could be convinced with the success of games like League of Legends and Dota 2 to embrace PC development for the success of the free to play model within fighting games?
Yeah, definitely. But I think there's going to be certain companies that are going to go along kicking and screaming. I think you have games like King of Combat for PC. And as we see more free to play fighting games going over to PC, companies like Capcom are going to have to either adapt or die because it's not just the reasons that you mentioned, but it's also, you have the thing that there's the fact that there's so many more PCs out there than consoles, and people don't actually have to buy new hardware in order to play them. So it's kind of like, well, you can stick to this. Um, I mean, console is kind of a niche market compared to PC. You don't have to buy if you make a low-end fighting game that's not too graphically intensive and it's kind of built to play on a keyboard, then immediately, and it's free, then you have all access to all these new people that already have keyboards and PCs that can try out a fighting game because probably most of these people have either never played or haven't played since like the Super Nintendo days. So you kind of open it up a lot more by doing that. But you have companies like Capcom that are going to be super stubborn about it because they don't understand free to play.
Rival, you have a little bit of experience with the development aspect of video games in general. For those of you guys at home that don't know, um, PC games have a very firm fixture in Asia, and a lot of that has to do with the fact that in some countries in Asia, uh, consoles, not just console games, but just consoles in general, are illegal, especially in mainland China, where a lot of gamers in China game on PC only because the fact that you can buy a console on the black market would land you in jail, kind of puts people in the mood to play PC. Rival, do you see this as an opportunity for some Asian developers to perhaps capture a segment of the greater market within that region that they've not been able to capitalize before since they primarily develop console?
You know, it's a little bit strange. I'm I'm a little bit. I go back and forth because when it comes to PC development, um, it feels like when you develop for PC, you kind of have to go for the lowest common denominator. With consoles, you always have something very very strict and baseline. You're always developing for an Xbox 360 or always developing on a PS3, and I think if like Ryan said, if the companies don't know what they're doing, they're gonna screw it all up. I mean, there were some ports that Capcom did. I don't remember which specific games, but they performed terribly on PC. And if your game performs terribly, then people aren't going to play them, and then they aren't going to catch on, and then people will say, well, I mean, they'll take the wrong lesson away. They'll be like, PC isn't a viable platform because nobody bought the game, so we're not going to do it anymore. And that's the big thing that I'm afraid of. You can't really take something as graphically robust as Street Fighter 4 and expect like all of the people of Asia who have bunk computers to just jump in and like, wow, this is great. I mean, people are going to run into frame rate issues, and I mean, the biggest thing that I think taking opportunity or taking this opportunity will mean having to scale back a lot of things and knowing which factors of the game are most important and concentrate on those, if that makes sense.
Martin, we're having this conversation right now um, under the assumption that the conventional wisdom states that free to play development works best on PC. But that's just us being biased towards development cycle for PC because that's all we know. For all we know, console development for free to play could be amazing. What do you see as being the things that console developers would need to do right out of the gate to make free to play development successful for Xbox 360, PS3, and possibly the Wii U?
Uh, for me, it would come down to just marketing. What's so great about free to play is that that model specifically doesn't work for me because I'm one of those people that like everything out of the box, especially when it comes to fighting games. But for this, you can introduce a whole new market to people who've never played fighting games before, and it's no cost on the consumer side, so there's nothing that they have to worry about. And I think all it comes down is just marketing. As long as the people hear the word free, which is one of the best and most powerful marketing words out there, people will come to it no matter even if they like the genre or not. Is they have the opportunity to do it risk free. So I think it's just going to come down to marketing and letting people know that it's like, hey, there's no risk on your part. Come play this for free. Try it out. If you like it, you can buy the other characters or buy the other stages at your discretion. You can purchase it whenever you want. So I think it's just going to come down specifically to advertising about the model itself.
Hanzo, there were fighting games that were in development or had already announced that they were moving to free to play or were experimenting with free to play before Killer Instinct and Tech Code Revolution made their announcements at E3. But due, I think, in part to the coincidental announcements of E3, Xbox One, Killer Instinct, all three of those things. Killer Instinct has kind of become the poster game, in my opinion, for free to play games. Um, do you see Killer Instinct being a compelling intellectual property to drive this business model forward?
No, I don't think on a console game cannot drive the free to play model. Period. Because like the Xbox One is trying to push digital games, digital DLC stuff, like just digital everything. And I don't think that's what you should be doing on a console. I think disc based is what consoles are. But PC wise, if like for example, look at King of Combat. If you guys have ever downloaded it, I have. I played it, and it's like League of Legends in that you can buy music, you can buy access to characters, you can level up and unlock the characters if you don't want to buy them. You can, they have a skill tree now for a fighting game, so and it's in its own little client. And I figure if you're not going to be controlling all the content and like dynamically updating it, then I don't see the point because Microsoft's historically been really bad at enabling updates. If you've ever read anything about the Skullgirls mishap with Microsoft, you have to pay tens of thousands of dollars to update your game every patch almost.
Well, Microsoft did say that they're going to be scaling back or eliminating altogether those developer
Well,
fees for patches and things.
Microsoft also says that you have to log on to their console 24 hours every 24 hours, and then they took that back. So I don't really take their word for
That's a
anything.
good point. That's a good
Well,
point.
also something to keep in mind is that Killer Instinct is not exactly free to play in the same way that the other fighting games, in the same with the same model that the other fighting games have right now. Because what they're doing is doing more of a demo version where you can play as Jago, and you can do all of the single player and multiplayer online stuff, but you can only pick Jago. So they're calling it more of like a demo version rather than like free to play. So you will be able to buy the additional characters, or you can just buy the regular Killer Instinct like standard edition or whatever with all the characters from the get-go.
Well, Ryan, um, with game demos and game betas becoming more and more popular, you've got PC gamers paying money in some senses to play the demos for some MMOs. You've got people buying console games like Crackdown to play the Halo 3 beta. That was part of the reason why most people bought that game was to play Halo 3 beta. So there's a lot of interest in demos and betas. Do you see this as kind of like a smart way to monetize demos and betas in that way?
Yeah, absolutely. If you look at the history of at least PC gaming, betas and shareware was, back in the floppy disk and CD-ROM era, like that was the way that you were able to try games. And somewhere along the line, that kind of disappeared. So when it comes to a genre like fighting games, where it kind of does require a lot of practice, and there is a steep learning curve. It makes a lot of sense that if you focus on giving away limited versions of the full game, then you would probably convert a lot of those people into paid customers, either that by buying the full game or by buying the game piece by piece, such as what Killer Instinct is doing. For example, Street Fighter 4 on PC would be the perfect way to start, right? Like the game is old, digital distribution costs literally nothing if you do it via BitTorrent. But the issue is that I think there's a lot of backwards thinking involved with everything that they're doing over there, and they don't really understand the way that freemium works. Because if you, for people that are interested in this whole like freemium model, there's a great book to read called Free by Chris Anderson, and it talks a lot about how if your costs of distribution are zero, and you only have stuff to gain by making your product free and distributing, whatever 5, 6, 10 gigs of data for Street Fighter 4 on PC via BitTorrent doesn't cost anybody anything and allows everybody to try this game that's basically old. I mean, I don't think anybody out there is really like buying Street Fighter 4 on PC anymore, which is why it's always on sale on Steam for like $5 or whatever. But if you just make a trial version of the game free, distribute it via BitTorrent, and then build in a way for people to buy it for like $5, $10 or whatever, I think we'd see a large increase in the player base.
Rival, how do you feel when you hear people talking about, when you hear us talking about the monetization of a demo?
I mean that, yeah, like Ryan said, this stuff has been happening like for a long time. That was the way. Apogee. I don't know if you guys remember Apogee games. They used to hand out like these demo discs that just had all demos on it, and then you'd have to buy it and get a code or whatever. I think that is a good way to do it. I think a lot of purists are going to say, hey, if it's a demo, then like people aren't going to get the full experience. Some people would argue that like a fighting game, you got to have all the characters in order to really get the full experience. But in my opinion, I think as long as people get a taste and they can feel it and play it and enjoy it, that will help get more gamers in and want to purchase the full product. I don't think it's going to it's going to shortchange anybody. So I do agree that demos and freemium stuff is like, it's whenever you can give someone the ability to play a game, that's always the best way to get them to buy it. I mean, you can give reviews and all sorts of shenanigans and throw parties and clubs, but if people can just play a little bit of it and be like, hey, this is pretty good, that's the ultimate way to get people to buy it.
Martin, let's take Injustice for a second. And let's say with Injustice, NetherRealm puts out a demo version similar to Killer Instinct, and you get to play as either Batman or Superman. And that's fine because most of the people who are going to buy that game or who are interested in that game want to play as Batman or Superman. And then people start unlocking characters. They unlock the Flash and Green Arrow or whatever, the characters that they like. What happens when that game starts showing up at majors and that game operating under that model, someone out there bought Ares and they're playing it at tournament? I mean, I play Injustice pretty religiously, and even I, in a game where all the characters are unlocked, sometimes find myself fighting Ares or Cyborg or Hawk Girl, and I'm saying, what do I do right now? How do you see players dealing with something like that with a free-to-play model where there's even less incentive to unlock a character like Hawk Girl or Ares when you have to pay to unlock a character you're probably not going to ever touch anyway?
I mean, that's really like more. If they were to go that model, it's kind of weird because DC's already established, so people know those characters. But like, say if you were to bring in a game where they're completely brand new characters that no one's ever heard of, that's going to be a little bit harder to do. And so, I mean, honestly, what would you guys think about like in that instance bringing it to tournament? Because from what I can see, that's not a big deal to developers. They don't think on tournament level. If they were to go to the free to play route, they're thinking about bringing as many people as they can in just microtransactions.
That's actually a good point. I think you're raising a really good point about the importance of tournament play and the sort of free marketing you can get from promoting your game in a tournament competitive environment versus just raw box sales and the number of casual gamers you can get to buy your DLC.
Like honestly, I don't see a game of that type of business model being accepted at majors just because of those problems.
Why not? Because if there's online play or you have like a friend in the same state as you, that plays that other character, why wouldn't you be able to play that character? It's like saying like the League of Legends character that you don't play that often is picked, and they just destroy everyone like every game.
Hold on. Let's play devil's advocate here, Hanzo, because let's talk about Cross Tekken. That's not a free to play game, although some people would argue that it's a retail game that then turns into a free to play game when you buy it. But this is a game that has a lot of people playing it online. It's really popular online, but no one playing it at weeklies, and it has statistically low numbers at majors depending on what region of the country you're in. But here's a game that really popular online, not so popular, and I mean this is a game that is not even close to that. I mean, this is a game that incorporates heavy elements of monetization for content, but it's not free to play, and you already see something like that happening.
Yeah, Hanzo.
Yeah, Hanzo.
Shibuya Second's a bad
Son of
example
a
in my
bitch.
opinion, because I mean it had really good numbers when it was vanilla back in 2012, if you remember, back at NCR days. It had really good numbers, and then people just didn't like the game. If I don't like an MOBA, it doesn't mean that the MOBA model doesn't work.
Well, okay, so
I can go find a free to play MMO that has like 50 people playing. It doesn't mean free to play MMOs.
No, that's a good point though, because we're talking about MOBA games, we're talking about MMO games. If I'm playing a free to play MOBA, if I'm playing League of Legends, right, and they introduce Thresh, they introduce Vayne or whoever. When that character gets introduced, I don't necessarily have to buy that character. I just have to know what they do in order to fight them. And a lot of what you're dealing with in MOBA is less about the actual character abilities and more about the game engine. It's like, well, what would they do within this situation? If we're here, how would they approach me? Or if I'm this close to their tower, what would they do, etc. Because a character can really only do like one of 5 things. It's one of their 4 abilities or an auto attack, or maybe they can use an item ability or whatever. But in fighting games, though, wouldn't you say that sort of starts to break down because the complexity of the meta game lends itself to the fact that, whereas in League of Legends, you might say, oh, hey, watch out for Vayne's Q because she's going to roll towards you and you're going to take extra damage. You don't want to be within this range. That's one thing. But, with a fighting game character, it's like, well, your jump in, fears can be countered by crouching medium punch, so you want to use jump in jab, but if you use jump in jab, they can use stand. I mean, like it starts to get a lot more complex than something like a MOBA game.
Yeah, I agree with that, and that's why I think if you're gonna make it free to play, you have to dumb down the execution a little bit and not have like even 6 buttons might be too much for a free to play because that's 2 extra buttons, and that's those 2 extra buttons is around 8 more actions or 6 more actions that you can do, and that makes it even more complicated. Something like an SNK layout would be acceptable for free to play.
Persona free to play.
Yeah, or Persona if it was a good game that could be free to play. Something along those lines where it's not really that executional, but there's a lot of depth strategy wise.
Well, hold on, that's a good point. Rival, do you feel like maybe a game like Smash would be a good banner carrier for the free to play model? A game that on its surface is simplistic, a limited number of buttons, a limited number of options, but does have a depth to it that longtime players will attest to. Do you think maybe a Smash type game would be good for free to play?
I mean, it depends on which Smash. I mean, people would argue that, say, Melee is like just as deep, if not more deep, than like a couple of Street Fighter games. I mean, there's more. I mean, it doesn't have as much attack buttons, but there's definitely the same amount of inputs. And if you count analog stick inputs versus digital inputs, there's like all of that you get into. It gets crazy. But the point that you're getting at that I agree with is, yeah, people are always trying to juggle the depth of control versus actual game depth, and I think everybody wants to strive toward making a game that is always deep but also very simple to get into. And I think, yeah, a game with a simpler mechanic that's very easy to see, Smash, I think is very popular because you have one number which is on the bottom, which shows you, hey, the higher your number is, the more likely you're going to get hit out, and then you get hit out and then you lose, and like that's all you need to know. And games like like BlazBlue and Persona, like they start having all these meters and everything like that, and people are like, whoa, you need to back up a little bit and make things simple. That way people can digest it more, and then when people are watching, it takes less time for people to consume all of the different things that are happening and be like, oh wait, what's that number down there? That's, that's their life meter. And how do you win? You knock somebody out. Great, done. Now people can observe it and then think, wow, I want to play that. But if people are always confused about what's happening, they're just going to freak out, and they're not going to want to put the time into it because it looks too crazy. I mean, let's face it, people don't want to do work. So, I mean, I'm all for having games that look really simple and have a deceptively deep engine. I think that's what people need to go toward. If that makes sense.
Ryan, Rival kind of brushed up against some very astute observations about other observers. Fighting games, when you take fighting games as a genre and you compare them to, say, League of Legends or even StarCraft or Dota, other lesser watched games, Dota is competitive with League of Legends when it comes to stream viewership. But when you have these games that get 1 million plus viewers for a major tournament, you take them and you compare them to a fighting game with 20,000 viewers for a major tournament, 30,000 viewers for a major tournament. Fighting games tend to be a little bit more insular. We kind of have a reputation as a community with our digital content production and our web content, our streaming content, to be insular. Do you ever worry maybe that seeing free-to-play games infiltrate our scene, creating the possibility of even more insular communities, sub-communities? Because the fighting game is a very fragmented, sort of loose conglomerate of people. We have anime guys and Capcom guys and 3D guys. And then when you get these free-to-play games, you run the risk of fragmenting the community even further. Do you ever worry that maybe that's going to cause our fledgling effort to attack the digital medium to maybe suffer a setback?
No, I actually think that if more fighting games went free to play, we would start infiltrating the other communities, right? So in the same way that now we have a lot of fighting game players playing League and Dota, maybe if it was easier to get into fighting games, StarCraft and League and Dota players would be like, oh man, I'm gonna check out this Street Fighter free game, and I think it would actually go the other way around, because I don't really think that it's when you use the word insular, I just don't see it that way. I think that the more people that are watching fighting games and playing free to play fighting games, the larger our whole thing grows.
Actually, what would make a good free-to-play game? I think all you guys know too. Freaking dive kick.
Yeah, right.
Yes, I agree.
Because if you're talking about like how simplistic and stuff like that compared to the cost and everything, that would be perfect. And I guarantee, like, if they microtransaction costumes or characters like they're doing now, they would make a lot more money. I just don't think that they're trying to make content to justify the cost of it. And if it's $20, people might not pick it up. But if it's free and you can pay like $2 to pick up Markman or whoever, it would do really well.
I actually think that's really fucking brilliant, and is a great example of what we're talking about earlier, with more simplistic games being able to effectively leverage the free-to-play model compared to, say, a game like Street Fighter 4 with 40-something or 50-something, or God forbid Tekken Tag 2 with 80,000 characters, where you're having to learn all these specific matchup-based pokes and things. Dive Kick is a very simple game, 2 buttons, and then you could every month or every 2 weeks, who cares? I mean, they release a new skin for a character, like, oh, here's the Chirithi skin. It looks like Cammy. Here's the, I think that's really smart.
Thank you. I will pass that along to Keats.
Yeah.
No, I'm just kidding. I won't.
If Keats is listening, hey, you should go free to play, bro.
Like, sue him? Okay.
Well, I mean, if I can interject a little bit, the whole Senior Footsies, I mean, I kind of dipped down in development, but I'm starting to bring it back up again. That was going to be the big thing was, hey, you pay 99 cents for the game, and then you can buy all sorts of other stuff. Like, so yeah, I'm totally in there.
Well, yeah, I think that's smart, and I think you should take that that idea and run with it and destroy Dive Kick. Senior
Is it going to be on PS4 and Xbox?
Um, we'll see what's it. We're talking to some people, but we'll see.
Nice.
Um, Hanzo, what do you think free to play kind of? I mean, like, because we typically there's a lot of guys you talk to them about Street Fighter or Marvel or Guilty Gear or whatever, and you ask them about these games and they say I've never played this game online. And I know that to some players who have joined the fighting game community, um, the last few years, the idea that there are guys out there who have never played a match online is kind of like, well, that's ridiculous to them. But I mean, we're talking about some like I know for a fact Ricky Ortiz does not play fighting games online, and I would probably be pressed to say he's never played a fighting game online. You know, there are guys that I know, friends of mine, who have been playing fighting games for a long time who have never played a game online. What do you think free to play means for the offline fighting game player?
It means unless there's a offline like campaign, and historically those have been generally bad outside of NRS games, then then you're kind of boned. I really don't know anyone who's playing Marvel for the single player aspects. To be honest, I've never met anyone. I know there's people out there who are like, oh yay Marvel, but I mean, if you're gonna buy a fighting game, it's mostly gonna be about competitive, unless you're gonna invest heavily into your story.
Yeah, but we
I would
don't.
say Injustice is like the only one that's doing that
Yeah,
right.
I don't see many of these companies
Yeah.
who are thinking single player is important. It might be really important. Injustice sold a lot off of their marketing and their single player promises, and their single player is admittedly very good. But
Yeah,
I
but
don't.
when I'm talking about offline fighting game players, I'm not talking about the freaking story mode. I'm talking about
Oh.
guys who are going to the arcade or guys who are playing at sessions. I mean, these guys play versus mode. That's what they play. They don't play online versus. They don't play King of the Hill or freaking Survivor or whatever. They play offline 1v1 versus.
Well, then you gotta adapt to the times, I guess. If
You're
it's gonna
screwed.
be a
Yeah.
PS,
It only
PS,
stays
PC.
fun for so long.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
Against
mean,
I
the
think you
AI.
can look if you look at Final Round with Cross Tekken, where Seth LOL beat Infiltration. That guy was primarily an online player, and I think Infiltration is primarily an offline player. So you can use that as an example of having to play online some at least to get a feel for what some of the other guys are doing with kind of obscure characters, which become more important in a free to play model if there are like way more characters.
adapt or die.
Because you just won't have people in your area that are playing the entire cast.
So Ryan, we're talking about what the free to play means for offline gamers. What does free to play mean for tournament organizers?
Well, I think we'll see a shift in business model as well because any company that's smart enough to do free to play will probably be smart enough to be able to cut deals with tournament organizers because I see that as kind of one of the objections to free to play is like, oh, what about tournament organizers? They're gonna have to buy all this stuff. Well, I'm pretty sure that it wouldn't be too hard to just create like a tournament license. If you buy 10 or 20 licenses, instead of having to pay, let's say, $50 retail for the whole thing, maybe you're paying 20 or $25 because you're buying 10 licenses. That would include all the stuff.
Rival, we're talking about tournament organizers and we're talking about free to play games. Do you maybe see this as being Capcom last quarter announced that they had failed to meet their sales expectations, their sales projections by a sizable margin. They announced the cancellation of several high profile titles and they announced some departmental closings and some layoffs as a consequence of their inability to meet their long term projections. Conversely, if you look at a game like League of Legends, where it's a free to play game, it makes it difficult for grassroots organizers or organizers who are similar to what we have in the fighting game community to organize the tournament because then they have, how are you going to set up a PC station with all the characters unlocked and all the runes unlocked? It's difficult. So then you see Riot Games kind of stepping in. They organize the biggest League of Legends tournaments in the world are all Riot Games tournaments. The biggest League of Legends streams are all Riot Games streams. They have their own League of Legends esports website which coordinates all their esports events. Do you see like this is an opportunity for a company like Capcom, or we saw today Atlas's parent companies are announcing bankruptcy? Is this an opportunity for these aging Japanese companies who are failing within the Western development market, who are failing to meet sales expectations, to take the bull by the horns and create an opportunity for themselves to get behind a product and create their own tournaments, create their. I mean, we saw Street Fighter 25. Capcom is obviously capable of coordinating a tournament. Can these guys take free to play and transition it into their own event-based marketing?
See, it's kind of a weird question because it kind of has two parts. One is, I mean, it's not two parts, but it's kind of split because yes, I do think that Capcom could do that. They have the muscle, they have the the name notoriety to do that. However, I guess another question is, and this is still unproven, are fighting games a type of game that can, sort of shoot them back into the profitability stratosphere? Because I mean, face it, there's no fighting game that's really been as popular. I mean, since the 90s. I mean, the heyday of Street Fighter was when Street Fighter was the king. But I mean, since then, even though Street Fighter 4 was like big and it was huge, I mean, it sold like 6 million copies or something like that, right? Anybody correct me? But then you look at other games like League of Legends have a much bigger player base, and like Modern Warfare sells like 40 million copies. So I mean, it's kind of hard because you think, well, should would it be better for Capcom to push Street Fighter and push fighting games? Like let's try to make something that's primarily a console experience and turn it into a PC experience, and retrofit these things like experience and buyable items, and make fighting games like, hey, this is what's going to make us our money. Or would it be better? And I'm not saying they should do this, but this is something I know that they're thinking is like, well, maybe we should make a game that is more like League of Legends or more like a Pokemon or more like a Modern Warfare. Try to find a game system that's already tailored toward that sort of audience, and so that it won't feel as alien. Because let's face it, a lot of people who are going to play the new Tekken Revolution, they're going to think, what the heck is going on? Like, I can just buy regular Tekken. Why are they doing this? And it's because they're testing the waters. They're trying to see if fighting games can actually fit this mold, because it's never been done before. It's such new ground. So I don't know. I can't say yes or no either way, because maybe fighting games can flourish. Maybe, kids, young kids will think, man, this is cool. Like League of Legends. I mean, I was the other day at a friend's house, and there's like a bunch of young kids. I mean, like some of them like almost 10 years younger than me, talking about League of Legends and how cool it is. I mean, I don't see that with Street Fighter. I don't see that with Mortal Kombat or Injustice. Like, that whole cultural movement needs to happen, and I'm not sure if fighting games are the type that are going to do it. But if anyone can push it into the realm, it's either Capcom or NetherRealm Studios. I mean, yeah, I don't know.
Um,
I think there
Go
was
ahead,
a,
Ryan.
there was an opportunity with Street Fighter 4 that Capcom had and then let go. But ultimately, the idea of Capcom taking the bull by the horns, like you said, and creating their own sort of league is just not. I don't think that that's practical at this point, based on the resources that they have allocated for fighting games, which is currently Hans, Combo Fiend, and Matt D. Right. So even if they wanted to do that, which I'm sure everybody at Capcom USA looks at Riot and is like, oh, duh, like this is what we should have been doing all along, but they just don't have the resources to do it and don't understand the business. Well, it's not that they don't understand the business model, but Street Fighter 4 is not built for that model in the same way that Riot is, the microtransaction model. Therefore, even if they wanted to, they wouldn't be able to do it, because I just don't think that Capcom has the resources internally to pull it off. Which is why I think you're going to see more and more Capcom fighters streamed tournaments, because I think Capcom is thinking, well, why reinvent the wheel? We already have this entire community and all these tournament organizers that are um, already running the tournaments for us. Why don't we just try to move our way into what they're doing and just focus on the content? Because it's much easier to just fly out a small production team and take care of the stream rather than try to run the entire event themselves, which they were able to pull off with the 25th anniversary tournament. But I think everybody knows that that was not a moneymaker for them because everything was free, and that was really more just a promotional campaign to sell the 25th anniversary box set. So what that means is now instead of having to pay Spooky or I Play Winner or Level Up, the fees that are required in order to stream a tournament, now Capcom, if your tournament is big enough, will just do it for free. But that kind of changes everything because now Capcom is controlling the content, and that puts guys like I Play Winner, Spooky, and Level Up in sort of a different predicament. And then we'll start to get into, well, who actually owns the content, and if these tournament organizers do not agree to have Capcom stream the tournaments, will they be able to continue without paying some sort of licensing fee for the use of the content on the stream as well as the tournament?
I mean,
Well,
they'd be shooting themselves in the foot if they did that, honestly, because
Oh,
that's all the streams that are out there currently right now are the only advertising Capcom has outside of their own corporation for these games.
well, hold on. Ryan raises up a good point. I mean, when League of Legends Season 3 started, and Riot Games announced the LOL Esports initiative, and they started to take more intellectual control of their product on the tournament level. A lot of people said the same thing that you're saying. They're saying this is suicide because the only people that have been promoting this game has been Twitch TV. You know, Twitch TV was the primary media outlet for League of Legends at that point, and a lot of people said that Riot Games was shooting itself in the foot by kind of not. I mean, you still watch League of Legends on Twitch, obviously, but it's a much more Riot controlled product now.
But look
Um,
how much money they were able to toss into it, and let people know how much money they were tossing into it compared to Capcom, who wouldn't be able to really do that.
that's a good point as well. Um,
Riot just has much bigger, much deeper pockets. It's just not practical for Capcom to do it the same way. But I think we'll start to see them stream more and more tournaments simply because instead of having to pay a streaming group to do it, Capcom will just do it for free.
Capcom is working in a really interesting way here because, not to break too far off the free to play focus, but we're now talking about Capcom. Um, this weekend's CEO tournament is being streamed by Capcom Fighters. This is a Capcom streamed tournament. You know, Hans and the crew at Capcom, or I don't know who he has supporting him. I know he's down there. They're down there streaming CEO this weekend. I mean, you
And
have
they're going to be streaming VXG next month.
right. So I mean, what you're talking about is what we're talking about. Capcom is kind of almost approaching it from the opposite direction. They're approaching what we have in place in the grassroots, and they're saying,
Right.
"Hey, can we get involved?" And
Exactly.
what do you think about that?
Well, could we
Oh,
also say that they're doing this for PR reasons as well to show that they're a part of the community, that they support the community? It's not all about controlling the content, but also their personal image, which honestly has been tarred and feathered for the past couple of years, just saying that they haven't been supporting the community at all.
yeah, absolutely. It's a smart move on their part because ultimately it's their game. But what does it mean for all of the other content producers and streamers and the tournament organizers that say, hey, well, what if we don't want Capcom Fighters to stream it because we have Injustice and we have Namco who are also going to want their games featured on the stream. So this is the people don't realize what a huge play this is for Capcom. It's very smart on their part. I'm not saying it's not smart for them. It's hella smart. I wish I wish I was the one that came up with it. But previously, let's say on finals day, like with the Evo stream, you're gonna have all these games all on one stream, but now all these non-Capcom games aren't gonna get the same sort of boost that they would have gotten otherwise from being on the same stream as Capcom games.
Rival, what do you think about when you hear? I mean, we're talking about the possibility of free to play taking fighting games and moving them towards a more producer and developer controlled offering with digital media offerings and streaming. But here we are with the reality of this weekend. We have Capcom entering into the grassroots to stream a tournament for a guy like Jabali. I mean, Hans and Capcom Fighters are coming to Orlando and they're going to stream CEO. That's a grassroots. That's a FGC tournament, and Capcom is coming to us. Um, when you hear about Capcom fighters and Capcom venturing into the community, uh, Martin Blake says that it's in their best interest to do so. It's in their best interest to be smart and to work with us. How smart is it though? I mean, like we are a very small minority of the people who buy boxes for fighting games. Somebody earlier in the I think it was you, said that Street Fighter 4 sold 6 to 7 million copies box. I mean, your average major viewership on a stream is 30,000 people. You want to guess 100,000 people play fighting games competitively out of 6 million, 7 million? I mean, when you hear Capcom moving into the arena of streaming grassroots tournaments like CEO, what do you think?
I think, you know, it's tough because like there's not much else you can do. I mean, what else would you do with fighting games? Like right now, the way that the culture, I mean, if we're talking about the social climate, it feels like that's what fighting games are for. They're for tournaments. They're for, fighting one-on-one fights and everything like that. So there's no real other option. If you're Capcom, like what else are you going to do? There's not much you can do other than get involved with, one of the most grassroots communities out of all of gaming. I mean, there's like stuff like Halo, for instance. They have stuff like Red versus Blue, like other creative outlets for the gamers to get into and do things. And I mean, there's other cute stuff that's happening with, Capcom, but I mean, realistically, the only outlet for mass exposure for fighting games is tournaments. So I think it's really great. I think if I were them, I would be scrambling to think of other ideas to make the content of Street Fighter and the content of other fighting games like Marvel more appealing. So like I don't know, other ways. I know that there's raps and stuff like that and other songs and Guile theme. Like I would try to capitalize on all that stuff and try to really push the brand of Street Fighter. But I mean, this is all not super relevant, but again, I do think it's good that they're getting involved. I think that's the best decision that they've made in a long time. I mean, they got someone from the community. In my opinion, one of the most invested people in the community. Um, anyway, yeah, but anyway, to wrap up, I do think it's a great idea. Capcom, you keep going. Have a good time doing that.
Um, I'm going to pass the last word for tonight over to a guy that I think kind of personifies the last word. Hanzo Gonzo, um, give me the last word. Free to play fighting games, Capcom streaming. Where do you see this headed?
I think Capcom streaming is gonna be not as a big deal as we all think it is. I still think people like Spooky and I Play Winner and Level Up will have their places, and if they don't in the FGC, then they can always just branch out. I mean, Level Up stream TED events, so it's not a doom sentence for these companies that are revolving around it. And who knows, if Capcom makes it big, then they can maybe even try and up the production value of some of these majors, like adding stats or doing other things. Free to play wise, I think the only free to play game that is actually going to matter in the long run is actually King of Combat, the Chinese one. And I think people need to be paying attention to that game a lot more than they are because it has a lot of crazy ideas that are probably going to propel the genre of free to play further.
All right, guys, and that's it for tonight. All conversation aside, please make sure you support Haunts, our friend and founder, uh, this weekend as he brings you the mainstream or the Capcom based stream. This is a little different this weekend. There's no real quote unquote mainstream. Capcom Fighters will be bringing you the Capcom games this weekend at twitch.tv/Capcom Fighters. And then our I Play Winner homeboy, longtime I Play Winner fixture, Deuce will be bringing you the non-Capcom games at the twitch.tv/CEO gaming stream. Make sure you tune in for Injustice. I do not want to see this game go RIP. And if it goes RIP, I will post angry stuff on my Twitter every day. Make sure you tune into I Play Winner Deuce's stream at twitch.tv/CEO gaming to support Tekken, all Persona, all the non-Capcom games this weekend. And then Ryan, I know you have some events coming up. I know you wanted to talk about.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, so Cross Counter is doing an Anime Expo after party next Friday, July 5th, here in downtown LA. Cosplay Vixen Vampy Bitme is going to be hosting, and yours truly will be DJ. I can't even say it straight with a straight face yet, but you can go to crosscounter.tv/party if you want to RSVP and come down. It'd be great to see everybody.
And then Rival, you've been providing music for our program for the last couple of weeks. I know you just released a new album. Why don't you tell us a little bit more about that?
So yeah,
Oh fuck, sorry.
sorry.
Nothing. Go ahead.
We just released an album called Truth Cannon, which is sort of like a concept album. It's all EDM stuff, heavily influenced by people like Wolfgang Gardner and Swedish House Mafia, among others. You go to planetskill.com. It's all on there, and you can check it out. And follow me on Twitter, 8BitPimp. That's me.
Ryan, did I cut you off?
No. I was just gonna say it's at Exchange LA because people were posting in the chat like asking where it's at.
Oh, there
Sorry.
you go. No worries. My bad. All right, so you guys can hit up Exchange LA on July the 5th for the Cross Counter Anime Expo after party with Vampy Bitme, the extremely lovely Vampy Bitme, and DJ Gootunes. And then planetskill.com and check out the new album from our good friend A Rival. It's called Truth Cannon. I listened to it a little bit early, and I've been listening to it since. And then make sure you guys tune in on July the 7th on twitch.tv/Team Spooky. Curly Mustache West Coast. We're back, baby. We announced it last Fray 2 weeks ago. We announced the upcoming West Coast edition of Curly Mustache. It's going to be back on July the 7th from UC Irvine. Team Spooky going to be bringing you guys the next installment of the Invitational Marvel Tournament leading up. And the very last, this is the weekend before EVO. So the very last tournament leading up to EVO. This weekend, CEO, the very last Road to EVO tournament leading up to EVO. So make sure you guys tune into that. I just want to take a moment to thank our guests tonight. Make sure you follow them on Twitter. Hanzo Gonzo, twitter.com/Hanzo Gonzo. Gutex, you can follow at twitter.com/Gutex. Martin Blake, you can follow at twitter.com/Blu-ray, REI. And A Rival, you can follow at twitter.com/8BitPimp. I apologize for getting his Twitter address wrong earlier. And then please make sure you subscribe to our YouTube and Twitch feeds here. It's youtube.com/iPlayWinner and twitch.tv/iPlayWinner. We actually simulcast all of our shows, not just the Fray, but the show that sucks and Super Desperation Radio. And as much as I like to joke about I actually listen to Super Desperation Radio every week. This is my olive branch to the SDR guys. I listen to your show every week. Please make sure you tune in to all the iPlayWinner radio programs, which we simulcast on YouTube and Twitch. So if you haven't subscribed, please subscribe.
You'll have to pay for the replays of YouTube now.
Oh, really?
Because we're going to free to listen model.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, this show is called the Framium.
We're gonna get the Darien lingerie skin that you can buy for 920 RP,
Yep.
and you can buy that skin for all those guys that are sitting here on the YouTube comments for our show saying, "Is that logo glowing and moving, or is it just me?" Like that's like the number one comment on all of our replays. But anyway, make sure you guys follow and subscribe to all of our feeds, and you can also follow us on Twitter at twitter.com/iPlayWinner. My name is Derry. You can follow me on Twitter at twitter.com/DarryH. And in honor of the absentee Magus 1234, yo Fray.